What's going on, everyone? Juicebags here, and welcome back to some Dungeon Defenders 2 and another defensive spotlight. Now, I did a straw poll for this one on Twitter, and the Squire's Cannonballs won out, and it's time to show off their hotness. Now, first off, a couple things I wanted to say before I get started with any of this is cannons scale very nicely with defense power and with defense crit. Now, what this does is it makes the cannons a viable option even from early game, as some easily available shards like Destruction that are available early in game are still very effective in the cannon itself. So the Cannonball is indeed a very strong tower to use through your entire Dungeon Defenders 2 journey. However, on that same note, they hit hard, meaning if they get reflected, they hit you hard. So if you're playing on a map with geodes, if you're not killing the geodes before they get into range of the cannons, you can easily one-shot yourself, most of your defenses, and within just a couple of cannons, pretty easily burn down your walls as well. So this can, without question, ruin your build if you're not careful about their placement and taking care to know what enemies are coming. Now, moving right along. Now, as I mentioned, the cannons do scale very well with defense power and defense crit. So, some of the early game shards like Destruction, defense critical damage, of course, defense crit strike, are all very, very valid to use throughout. However, I am going to focus mainly on its in-game opportunities. Now, in my opinion, there are two shards that you just cannot do without. One of them being Deadly Strikes, increases the defense range of the affected tower by 40%. This is a huge impact on cannons because with their quick fire rate, cannons will get several shots off quicker if you use Deadly Strikes than if you don't. A lot of times the enemies will even be dead before they get into range of where your cannons would be at if you did not use Deadly Strikes. So Deadly Strikes is a 100% must-have for any cannons that I do, without question. The other being Heavy Cannonball. Now, Heavy Cannonball is not really bringing you any power at all. It's not hitting hard. It's not bringing you anything incredible in the damage department. However, it is turning the cannons into a just massive utility tower. As we see, Cannonball Tower has a 20% chance to spawn a rolling cannonball that pierces up to 10 targets, stunning them for 2 seconds and dealing damage. Now, a few keys here. Number one is it's not a chance to stun, it is stunning them. If it hits them, they are stunned. Plus, it's piercing 10 targets. So 2 or 3 of these in a lane, and you've got heavy cannonballs rolling through entire packs, stunning every single mob in the pack. Heavy Cannonball is without a doubt a must-have shard. Now, this is available in Chaos 5. The second you get it, it is a complete life changer. It makes coping with assassins just a non-issue. Just watch for the big slow rolling ball and run the assassin right over to it, and it's instant assassin removal with that 100% chance of stunning, as long as the heavy cannonball does proc. Now, I personally still like to get some power out of my cannons, and although you can use just about any defensive damaging shard as your third, I personally go with power transfer. Let's take a look at the numbers. Now, first off, with the Deadly Strikes for the defense range and Heavy Cannonball, with power transfer, you see we're doing 971,000 DPS, and that's coming through 278,000 attack damage and 1.5 million crit damage. Now, although this is the highest damaging utility cannon you can have, you can use just about anything else and still get pretty darn good results. So, say you wanted to throw in defense rate to get just a little bit more speed out of it. Now, early in-game and until you get into Chaos 7, I personally suggest defense rate, Deadly Strikes, and Heavy Cannonball as your 3 shards. Now, once you get closer to end game and you start getting some of those Chaos 7 relics, you can eliminate that defense rate as you're not getting much more utility out of it. So we do see with the defense rate shard in there, we had slightly quicker attacks. However, our overall DPS has dropped compared to the power transfer. Now, a couple of kind of honorable mention shards that you can put in there that are nowhere near the effectiveness of the power transfer or the defense rate, really. Actually, they're close to defense rate. Is, first off, good old destruction. Throw destruction in there, and you're going to be about 764,000 DPS. Where were we with defense rate again? Let me check. With defense rate, we were at 759, so right there in the exact same ballpark. So destruction is a very viable shard that you can throw in there and actually get slightly more damage than with the defense rate shard. Now, this is in Chaos 7 gear. Earlier on, you're gonna want defense rate. Just trust me on that. It's gonna make those heavy cannons proc more often and add that additional CC to your lane. Now, another shard in the mix that you can use is like Vampiric Empowerment. Vampiric is not going to give you as much as Destruction would in a medallion. However, Vampiric Empowerment is still going to be right there, pretty darn close to the same DPS as the defense rate and the destruction. However, there is just straight up no comparison with going power transfer, and we know this. Every damaging defense in the game that you're using medallion on, you should indeed have power transfer, and that's going to jack us all the way up to that 971,000. Now, you can use a mark in your cannons as well. So, let's see, let's get comparable shards in here. Defense critical damage, and let's get rid of that defense rate. Let's just go with a medallion with defense crit damage compared to, see, because it's going to have deadly strikes and heavy cannonball, compared to a medallion with power transfer compared to a mark with defense crit damage. So we're 971,000 with the medallion. If we switch it up to a mark, we see that's 933,000. So very, very comparable numbers. Now, an important thing to note, this is a much better mark. Well, it's not much better, but about 300 difference in its primary stat between this mark and medallion. I'm comparing them. However, the mark holds up just fine. If you have a mark and that's what you want to use, my suggestion there would be deadly strikes, defense critical damage, and heavy cannonball. However, my go-to is without question the medallion. Power transfer, deadly strikes, heavy cannonball, it does awesome damage, plus provides just damn near game-breaking CC. However, like I mentioned, watch them geodes, because the cannonballs will one-shot you. Now, as we upgrade the Cannonball Tower, of course, the DPS just goes through the roof, 4.81 million. That's through 834,000 attack damage and a nice fat crit of 9.24 million damage. So this is going to lead to lots of overkill, as there's going to be tons and tons of baddies getting one shot. However, is there really anything wrong with that? Now, when it comes to Ascension for your cannons, it's going to be exactly like every other damaging defense. And for a builder, we are always going to go into defense crit chance very, very first thing. Now, at level 60 Ascension, you should have 20 points into defense crit chance and 20 points into defense speed. Now, as you go up past level 60 Ascension, you're going to want to start adding to your Cannonball range gambit. And range is a huge factor with cannons, and we all know how small that range is right when you first start off in game. So start working on that range just as soon as you can, right after your defense crit is capped. Now, after you're done with the Cannonball range gambit, then you're going to want to go ahead and throw everything you've got into defense crit damage. Of course, you're going to be a builder, so you're running around the map. Always give yourself a little movement speed for the quality of life. However, our biggest three stats are going to be defense crit chance, defense crit damage, and the range gambit. Now, in the defense category, we already mentioned by Ascension 60, you should have 20 points into defense speed. After that, every other point you get, you're going to want to dump directly into Cannonball Tower damage. As since the cannons do scale nicely with defense power is going to be where it's at in the defense tree. Now, this will also help negate some of the loss of defense power you got from the range gambit, and the two actually kind of work hand in hand to balance each other out. So every point that you're putting into range gambit, you're going to want to put a point into Cannonball Tower damage to help minimize that loss a little. So that will do it for now. That is a look at the Squire's Heavy Cannonball. So thank you very much for watching. Click that like button and please subscribe to the channel. And I will be back soon with some more Dungeon Defenders 2. And keep an eye out for another straw poll on Hero Spotlights. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.